Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and welcome to the EUIC Championship Series Cup. This is a brand new limited meta in Go Battle League that we'll have for the next 2 weeks. The EUIC Cup has a bit of a complicated rule set, so I will list the rules on screen now. And I had an amazing start to this Championship Series Cup meta. I won 11 of my first 12 games to climb up to 32-47 ELO with Shadow Tyranitar. Shadow Tyranitar is an absolute nightmare as a closer. I paired it up with two bulky meta options, Licky and Kingdra, and the team just could not stop winning. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we pick up a negative lead, leading Licky into Furret. In this meta, Furret does not run its traditional Sucker Punch, but instead opts for Quick Attack, Swift, and Brick Break. This means that Furret is able to spam out Brick Breaks with alarmingly fast speed. I'm always going to be no shielding the first on Licky, as I know that the future ones are going to do more. I end up resetting the debuff and then pivoting out into Kingdra. Kingdra more than happy to tank whatever they throw. My opponent fires off a Brick Break and sends in Spidops. Now this is the #1 Pokemon in the meta. Spidops is an absolute terror. Now you may notice my team, I'm definitely going more anti-meta here, so I don't have Spidops on my team, but I'm actively looking to counter it. Outrage from Kingdra is going to force the final shield from Spidops, and I send it back in Licky. My opponent has gone down both shields, which means that Shadow Tyranitar is about to absolutely feast. Spidops is on Bug Bite in this meta, as Bug is largely unresisted. I fire off the Body Slam, I realize I'm not getting to another Body Slam, so I'm forced to send in Tyranitar. Tyranitar would take massive super effective damage from Lunge, so I put up the shield, and back in comes Furret. Furret desperately trying to make it to the Brick Break, but before it can get there, Tyranitar, even when debuffed, takes the knockout with Brutal Swing. In the back is Seaking. Seaking on Peck, Icy Wind, and then your choice of Drill Run or Mega Horn. Stone Edge connects. Look at that damage. That is debuffed damage. This Tyranitar is Lunge debuffed. That would have one-shot at full power. Back in comes the Spidops, but they cannot make it to the Lunge. Shadow Tyranitar, the speed, the power, taking all 3 knockouts, and that is a good game. Hopping into game number 2, leading Licky into Spidops, this is a very good lead. One of the reasons why I wanted to lead Licky, apart from it being extremely neutral in a lot of matchups, is the fact that it does do well against Spidops. I always want to try and lead something that can beat Spidops, or at the very least, have a neutral to positive matchup against it, because I never really want to be in a disadvantageous spot against Spidops, because it will absolutely sweep you if you give it a chance. After getting a shield with a Body Slam bait, I'm able to send in Kingdra. I've gotten them pretty low. The question is this going to be Swift range? I'll never find out. My opponent takes advantage of the desync in timers and makes a beautiful catch onto Spidops. Spidops will get absolutely erased by an Outrage. It's now a 50-50 bait call. I'm going to be full sending, Outrage lands, and down goes Spidops. That is a really big knockout. I still have quite a bit of HP on the Kingdra and some energy as well, so when they bring back in the Drapion, I can make it to the Swift. Swift into the Drapion will force the final shield, and I basically always want shield advantage for Tyranitar. Tyranitar is not going to do much in the zeros, but if you have a shield for it, then things are going to get scary. In the back is Licky. Licky in this meta will typically be on Earthquake for matchups like these, but down a shield, there's no hope. Shadow Tyranitar, Stone Edge is going to be landing, and my opponent resigns the match. We've got a bit of spice on the lead in the next match, beating Licky into Shadow Dragonair. Now, the typical dragons in this meta, more often than not, are Kingdra and Dragalge, so seeing Dragonair is a bit of a cool pick. My opponent banks energy on Dragonair, save switches into Furret, and this is what makes Furret so deadly. Nothing really wants to switch into a Furret that's up energy. My plan here is to absorb the Brick Break, and then look to just pivot into the Kingdra. Again, trying to preserve and keep my shields intact for the Shadow Tyranitar, because we know Shadow Tyranitar with a shield advantage can and will absolutely sweep. Swift does do a sizable amount of damage to Kingdra. I return fire with a Swift of my own, but unfortunately, it will not do enough to take the KO. This means my Kingdra is now going to be very, very low, and I could potentially get sniped down. My opponent, however, is going to concede the farm down. They bring in Licky, and I'm barely able to hang on and make the last second Swift. Swift is going to connect, and I'm getting aggressive. Let's send in Tyranitar. Tyranitar farming up a massive amount of energy. They do have enough for the Earthquake here. I put up the shield. I get Body Slam baited. That is not ideal, but with each Dragon Breath that lands, they get closer and closer to Brutal Swing range. I fire off Brutal Swing. There are going to be no shielding. That's going to be a CMP type Brutal Swing to the Earthquake. My opponent does have energy banked on the Dragonair. I believe they banked an entire Aqua Tail before switching out. They're going to be switching in here. and it all comes down to a catch. I switch into the Kingdra and get the back-breaking catch. We catch the Aqua Tail where it's double resisted, and now Dragonair will fall to the might of Licky. Licky just has body slams for days. First gets no shielded, but there's more where that came from. Licky. This energy stored from earlier just absolutely deadly. My opponent just stops tapping. I can't blame him. That catch, oh my goodness. They had the move. They tried to overfarm and maximize energy. We snipe down with Tyranitar and take the win. Our next opponent is an incredibly tough battler, Sultan Koji, the Japanese national champion. Now, this lead matchup is not a particularly strong one for Licky. Spiritomb will often end up shielding the first charge attack because they're able to apply debuffs with Rock Tomb. And once Rock Tomb debuff gets applied, then suddenly Spiritomb is an absolute menace to remove from the field. It looks like they're not going to get the farm down here, so I pivot into Kingdra, anticipating they would try and catch the Earthquake, but my read was wrong. They just stay in with the Spiritomb and fire off Rock Tomb. That's not ideal. Kingdra does not love this matchup, but I'm able to make the Outrage, and I'm hoping that they'll just let the Spiritomb go. Outrage lands, down goes Spiritomb. That's a really big KO for me, and now they're going to send out Furret. These quick attacks do add up, but the good news for me is I think I'm just outside of Swift range. It's going to be close, but Kingdra barely hangs on. I undertap the Outrage, and this means I get to lock in, even at -1, some pretty nice damage. I switch back into Licky and snipe them down with Earthquake. Earthquake is going to KO Furret. In the back is Dragalge, and unfortunately, I think I lose this game. Normally, Tyranitar into Dragalge is going to be a good matchup for the Tyranitar, but we're on even shields. But they got the one Dragon Tail head start. That means they're always going to outpace. Dragon Breath will add up huge damage on Dragalge. Dragalge now has the Aqua Tail. This game comes down to a catch. I predict they're going to predict the catch, so I stay on the field, but they just throw the move. And unfortunately, this is game over. Aqua Tail lands, but the rank 5 Tyranitar refuses to get KO'd, survives the Aqua Tail, brutal swing lands, KOing Dragalge, as somehow we clutch a 1 HP win. Hopping into the next match, Licky into Dragalge once again, and this is a matchup where having Earthquake on Licky is very, very helpful. Licky is just so incredibly bulky, and that's a really big advantage when going up against these dragons that can spam out Outrage incredibly quickly. Not a lot in this meta can absorb a neutral Outrage. Licky is one of those Pokemon. Licky is going to be no shielding. Outrage connects, but it's just not enough. Now, I get to force both shields or deal devastating damage. They let it go, they get knocked out, in comes Spidops, and I do not want to give up any farm, so I get aggressive and pivot into Kingdra. Tyranitar has a very poor matchup into Spidops because you just get absolutely shredded by the bug bites. They get to apply a debuff with Lunge, and they make a very nice catch saving Spidops and absorbing the debuffed Outrage onto Licky. But even at -1, Outrage is still an exceedingly efficient attack, so we're still going to be able to get them very, very low. Licky barely clinging on here, only a couple HP remaining, but this just sets up Tyranitar to sweep. In comes Tyranitar, able to get the Dragon Breath down. You're going to see the bug bites. Tyranitar getting melted, but I'm up energy, and I have such a pacing advantage over Spidops that it's just simply not going to matter. Even though the bug bites are deleting Tyranitar, Tyranitar does lose the 2 shield here pretty badly, but this is the 1s, and I'm up energy. So I make the brutal swing, KO Spidops, and the winning continues. We've got mirror lead in the next match, Licky versus Licky. This matchup is honestly one of the matchups that I really like about this meta because there's just so much neutral play across the board, so it really comes down to how you play rather than just getting some kind of perfect alignment. My opponent farms up to a potential Hyper Beam, I disrespect it, and I'm very happy that I did. This meta is a little bit tough in that there's a lot of moments when you don't know what your opponent's secondary charge move on Licky is. I did strongly consider Hyper Beam on Licky over Earthquake, but considering that Kingdra doesn't have the cleanest matchup in Spiritomb, and speak of it, there it is, I wanted to try and ensure that I at least had a way to hit Spiritomb, so Earthquake ended up just making the most sense. Here, arguably, I could have just let the farm down happen and then brought in Tyranitar, but I just really never want to give Spiritomb an energy head start because when it gets up energy, it can get quite scary. I full send the Outrage, landed through 2 shields, and their final Pokemon is revealed to be Spidops. Spidops, not what Tyranitar is hoping to see, and my opponent ends up calling a Swift bait as well, adding insult to injury, but I'm still gonna persevere and see if I can win this game. Lunge, of course, will be shielded, but will apply a guaranteed attack drop. But even with the attack drop, even with the Bug Bite shredding my HP, I'm going to make it to the back-to-back Brutal Swings. And this is going to be putting my opponent very low. They shield once, they end up shielding twice, and I know I'm pretty close to a move on Licky and the Kingdra. So after waiting down the timer, I'm just going to bring in Licky. I should be 2 off. They cannot farm me down before I make the Body Slam. They're forced to knock me out with the Lunge. And then I should have enough HP on the Kingdra to survive the Bug Bites and make it to the Swift. So back in comes the Kingdra, even with my opponent making a great bait call. It just did not matter. Kingdra knocks out Spidops, and we get another win. Hopping into the next match, leading Licky into Shadow Drapion. Now this is a pretty solid matchup for the Licky. Obviously, if you end up getting shield calls wrong in this matchup, like you end up having an Earthquake shielded or a Body Slam no shielded, it can get a little bit more uncomfortable. They land a Crunch, and they make a very nice catch and sneak of the Body Slam bait onto Miltank. Now, Miltank was not really a Pokemon I was too familiar with. I ended up sending in Kingdra. And I believe this was actually a pretty big misplay on my part when I could have brought in the Tyranitar. Tyranitar would have forced them into throwing Ice Beam or Thunderbolt, but at the very least, Tyranitar I think probably would have been better used here. Because Kingdra, as I found out, cannot knock out with a Swift from this range. I was thinking surely Miltank, I mean, it's pretty close to the red HP. Miltank is very bulky. I did not appreciate how bulky Miltank is. Miltank, I'm forced to throw 2 Swifts, and I just lose all my energy. In comes Drapion, trying to CMP-tie Licky, but I will get a free one. But I still think I'm in trouble here. I'm going to go for the bait. If I can get both shields from my opponent and then set up the 1-0 shield Tyranitar, I should be good, but my opponent calls it and then catches on their own Tyranitar. And this is unfortunately where we are going to take our first loss. And it's only fitting that a team where Tyranitar is just absolutely sweeping that we're going to lose to a Tyranitar. But Tyranitar, it's too good. I'm showing that it's too good, and my opponent is showing that it's too good here as well. They're just too far ahead on energy, so I'm forced to no-shield, but by no-shielding, I am now going to be at a health disadvantage for the rest of the game. Brutal Swing is going to be shielded. If I can farm down, I can win, but I can't. I'm the one who actually gets farmed down. I bring in Licky, and Drapion makes a charge stack, and I'm just too low. I have no energy on the Kingdra. I can't ever get a double up on the Licky. I switch into the Kingdra, and yeah, it's just over. Very well played to my opponent. They made some great catches, some great bait calls, and they had a Tyranitar, and that Pokemon is just terrifying. Hopping into the next match, we've got another mirror lead, Licky into Licky. Again, very happy to play out this lead matchup, because this lead matchup, I would rather take this damage here from Licky than anywhere else on my team. Because Earthquake, it's not going to do a lot into my Licky, but into the Tyranitar or the Kingdra, it would hurt quite a bit more. I'm going to go full sending the Earthquake here because I know that Earthquake, it's just going to do way more damage in the mirror, and I believe with 2 Earthquakes, I can come pretty close to knocking out. They fire off Earthquake, so they would Body Slam into Earthquake. I think just double Earthquake is probably the play, although as I play the Licky Mirror, I can kind of play it out. They actually live on 1 HP, and I'm able to snipe them down. Now, these battles were from stream, so unfortunately, it looks like there was a sound redeem that popped up there. We have a sound bite from Marto, so apologies for that. Normally, that's not over my gameplay, but I was doing kind of a quad stream where I had 3 other streamers with me, so my setup was quite a bit different to what it normally is. But we're able to Swift bait Spidops, and anytime you're able to get a Swift shielded as Kingdra, you're just so far ahead. Now, I'm just going for the jugular, full sending Outrage. Outrage lands, down goes Spidops. It's double in the back, and I might actually lose this. This is not looking good. Double is kind of like the perfect Pokemon in the back here for Tyranitar. Well, the perfect Pokemon to beat Tyranitar, that is, because these double kicks are absolutely shredding me. The good news for me, however, is I'm able to make a second Brutal Swing and get them very, very low. I send in Licky. My opponent ends up waiting to see what gets brought in. They try for a farm down, and they do not get it. I make the Body Slam, KO Licky, and take home the win. Hopping into the final match, leading Licky into Dragalge, a pretty nice lead. I really like no shielding Licky in this lead matchup. I'm going to farm up 1 past the move, watching for a catch, and they get the catch onto Tyranitar, anticipating that it was going to be a Body Slam bait. Man, that is such a nice catch and a nice prediction for my opponent. I'm going to bait them, grab a shield, and then end up going into my own T-Tar, and they call the bait again. Oh my goodness, I am just in shambles in this final match. Bait call after bait call, prediction after prediction, and I don't even really know what I'm supposed to do at this point. My opponent is now at the back-to-back Aqua Tail, so I will be forced to CMP-type Brutal Swing to the Aqua Tail, and if they're counting, they know this is not a Stone Edge. They let it go, and I'm down 2 shields to 0. That no shield on Tyranitar, that's a wild no shield. But in the back, they have one of the Pokemon that I could actually beat, and its name is Goodra. Goodra, I've really liked in past OGL metas. In this meta, I think it's a lot tougher of a bring because it just doesn't really do any damage. There's so much bulk, and Goodra, if it's running Aqua Tail and Thunder Punch, I don't even think I get KO'd by an Aqua Tail here. Goodra goes with a harder hitting Thunder Punch, and that doesn't KO either. Licky Licky was so low, but I survive. I get the Body Slam. Now I can bring in Kingdra, and Kingdra should just be able to farm everything down because my opponent's dragons are just simply too low. In comes Dragalge. Dragalge is going to make a last second move, but this is not the energy required for an outrage. It's just going to be the Aqua Tail that is double resisted. We farm down Dragalge, farm down the Goodra, and that is a good game. All in all, I had an incredible amount of fun day one of this meta. I really feel like this is a really, really good meta. I feel like there's a lot of neutral, flexible play, and anytime a Pokemon like Shadow Tyranitar is good, I am a pretty big fan. Shadow Tyranitar, it feels incredibly strong if you're able to give it the proper leverage in this meta, and that's making sure that you're doing a good job, being very cautious with making sure that Tyranitar is going to have the shield or energy advantage that it's going to need to thrive. Because Tyranitar, we saw it time and time again, it's able to basically wipe out 2/3 of a team if set up properly, but in this meta, you have to be very careful about how you use your shields. Shield management is very, very important. You want to be very deliberate and not shield moves that don't KO, making sure that you're trying to set yourself up as well as possible. I also think in this meta, switch advantage, much like the EUIC meta that happened a few months back, switch advantage is so much less important in this meta compared to like an Open Great League, because you don't really have like the Bastiodons of the world that are hard winning or hard losing matchups, but instead you end up having a lot more neutral play across the board, and to me that ends up being a lot more skill intensive. So day one of this meta, I had an absolute blast. I know this week is Ultra League and also this EUIC meta. I'm probably going to be posting a lot of EUIC teams because day one, I was really impressed with this meta. I think there's a lot of really, really cool Pokemon that are eligible for this meta, and man, I'm just having an absolute blast. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.